Mark Greaney burst onto the thriller scene in 2009 with his best-selling debut, The Gray Man. The pulse-pounding introduction of Court Gentry, a government operative turned freelance assassin, put the thriller world on notice. Greaney was a force to be reckoned with. The novel's breakneck pace and sharp characterizations caught the attention of Tom Clancy, who tapped Greaney to co-write the continuing adventures of Jack Ryan, completing 3 novels co-written with Clancy and 4 additional after the legendary author passed away. Greaney garnered an even larger following. After years of writing 2 books a year, Mark Greaney stepped away from the Jack Ryan series to focus solely on the Gray Man novels. His inventive storytelling, constant shifting locales, and wildly original action sequences set a new standard in the genre. But it is the man at the heart of his novels, Court Gentry, aka Violator, aka The Gray Man, that continues to surprise and delight his readers. And now, with 1 minute out, Greaney shows a side of the Gray Man we have never seen before. Written in first person, 1 minute out gives readers a chance to see the world, not in black and white, but in shades of gray. All right, well, let's get rolling right along with Mark Greaney here. Hey, Mark, so, we all know that 1 minute out is kind of in the first person point of view coming up here. And we get to see what's inside of the Gray Man's head. Did you have to spend more time thinking about how and what he was communicating in that first person this time around, or did that same flow coming from your head hit it like it did in the third person perspectives?
It wasn't a massively difficult transition. I'm glad I did this one in the third person because Court, the hero, is best when he has some sort of a foil to bounce off dialogue with and whatnot. And in this book, there are people that come in and out of the story, but it's not like a Zach Hightower, somebody that like can be funny with and can be tough with and all that sort of stuff. So I wanted to just do it first person so you would see the nuances of the guy and see what he's thinking without having that aid of having somebody there that he can talk to and throughout the whole thing. So once I started doing it, it wasn't that hard. Honestly, the first book I wrote that had the Gray Man in it, it never got published. I gave it to an agent who is now my agent, and he liked the character, but he didn't think the story was good. Well, he didn't say it wasn't good, but he said it wasn't. You guys have all heard it. Yeah. It was great, but
it's not for us.
Yeah, not for us. But anyway, that one was in first person. So I'd actually written a Gray Man story, the whole book in first person. And
good to know.
And it's funny, I went back and read it again, going like, hey, I can use some of his internal dialogue and asides in this book and, save some time. And then I read it and I was like, no, I'm a different writer than I was in 2006 or whenever I wrote it.
Cool.
Kind of continuing on that thought, Court Gentry's internal monologue and thoughts were pretty much exactly how I'd imagined them based on the character you created over the first 8 Gray Man novels. First of all, holy hell, this is the 9th Gray Man novel. It's amazing. And that's secondly, and you kind of answered this a little bit, but what was the impetus? Was it just the plot that made you switch at this point in time to first person? And the follow-up to that is, in future installments, are you going to go back and forth, or have you kind of fallen in love with one or the other?
I am going to answer the second question first. I'm going back to third person for the next book. I'd like to do another first person. I think it worked, and I appreciate you saying that you liked it. And what was the first one?
Just about why now? Why this?
Oh, right.
Moment?
Yeah. So I wish I had a more. Yeah, partially for the reasons I said that he doesn't have a Hightower or like a sidekick in this book, but in a lot of books he doesn't. But I would create these characters that were sort of funny or tough or whatever for him to interact with. And this book, he's interacting with this young female Europol agent, and it didn't have the same feel. Having said that, I have told everybody I was going to write the last 3 Gray Man books in first person and chickened out, like in the first chapter. All 3, Gunmetal Gray, Agent in Place, and Mission Critical. I had designs on them, each of those being first person. And as I started and I got to the first hurdle of like, wait, no, that doesn't work. I'd have to rethink the whole thing. Then I just dumped it. But I've always wanted to do a first person.
Yeah.
And I'm I think it worked reasonably well, and I will do it again. Hopefully, if my editor lets me. But not. I'm not going to do like a bounce back and forth or anything like that. We'll just see how this story is driven by the story.
So, Mark, 1 minute out focuses on human trafficking, which is kind of one of those like dirty little secrets most people either don't want to talk about or rarely want to acknowledge. So, how did this, really critical and important topic become a major plot point for the next Court Gentry novel?
I had this idea that I wanted to see the gray man do something that he thought was wrong, like to feel like he screwed up, and the whole book is his journey to fix his mistake. And so I was like, let's put him on some sort of righteous mission, or some mission he feels is righteous, but it's from something long in the past. And that's how this book opens. There's a Serbian war criminal that court's going to assassinate for things that he did 30 years ago. And in the process of that, he uncovers, not only does he uncover these human trafficking victims, but he makes their terrible situation worse by him arriving and like causing all this mayhem. He knows there's gonna be fallout on these women for what he did, and so it's just part of his personal crusade. So really, the human trafficking, it just sort of came to me as like, that's a subject matter that obviously is massive. I mean, it's the third largest criminal enterprise in the world. People who talk about it like they talk about drugs or weapons or counterfeiting and stuff like that. You don't hear as much about it. I mean, when you do, it's usually in the context of human smuggling. Like bringing people over from Syria and stuff like that. But as I started to do the research on it, it was, my initial idea, and I started doing research on it, and it was so much more vast than I could have imagined, so much more brutal and cruel than I could have imagined. So as a writer, that really fans your flames to, like, you want to talk about something when you're like, holy moly, I didn't know this. Does everybody else know this?
Yeah, no kidding.
And then the book becomes very passionate to you, because you're like, oh my gosh, this is something that, I've read in this dry study on human trafficking in the Balkans in, the 2000s or something. And it's like, I'd like to put this into a narrative that, will get more readers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing makes it. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, because I researched it a bunch for a previous novel as well. And was there anything in particular that you came across that just, I guess the whole thing's shocking, but was there anything in particular that shocked you more than anything else in your research?
Well, 1/3 of sex trafficking victims in America are from outside of America. That's kind of horrific when you think about it. I mean, really, when you asked me that question, the first thing I thought was like every single bit of the Epstein case, which I was researching for this book, but so much more is known now because a lot of this really blew up just this year. And as I was, in the latter half of writing the book, I mean, in 2019. Yeah. And I was doing all my research in the first half of the year, and then the Epstein thing really got big, I guess, in June, July. Yeah. And I wasn't as focused on it because I was deep in the writing and I'd done the research. I created my characters or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I did do a lot of research on it, and I've stayed up listening to podcasts and whatnot about the Epstein case. And it's so horrific, and there's so many big, powerful, wealthy, connected people involved. From doctors that kept these women healthy and bleached their teeth and all these other things up into the politicians and stuff that
Yeah, no kidding.
And that was just like you hear about the Mexican drug wars, and it's like everybody's on the take and this and that, and you're like, wow, that would never happen here.
Yeah, I agree.
So Mark, nothing makes a decent person's blood boil like the victimization and exploitation of women and children. I personally, when I was a Secret Service agent, I conducted an investigation that led into child pornography and arrested this guy, and I went to a trial. And my wife said for months, like, I was just angry, and I knew I was angry inside because I had to see all those images and videos and whatnot. Yeah. And so we've talked about fiction allowing us to right some of the wrongs in reality, but I'm curious, what are your personal thoughts on the pursuit of extrajudicial justice, particularly when it comes to crimes like trafficking?
Yeah, I mean, it's very simple for a thriller writer to have his hero go and kill bad guys, but he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't kill a good guy, and that wouldn't get out of hand. So you have to think about like the reality of that, getting out of hand. But there's an epigraph at the beginning of the book, which sums up all my research of the story, and it's from Shakespeare's The Tempest, and it's "Hell is empty, all the devils are here."
Mhm.
And that was like, I saw that while I was working on the book, just randomly saw that line while I was working on the book. I was like, oh my gosh, that's this thing where I'm 52 years old and I'm still realizing the ways of the world, and things I'm just blissfully unaware of. And so, gosh, I mean, there are some organizations that are sort of private organizations that go out and catch child pornographers or do these sting operations. In the book, there's a fictionalized group of veterans that are over in Manila, and they're involved in crushing sex trafficking networks or whatever. That's not based on a real organization, but there are real organizations out there that do amazing good work.
Yeah. So we're all pretty familiar with your travels. I mean, you document pretty well. All your past books, you've gone to a lot of locations. I mean, for this one, you went to Croatia, Bosnia, Italy, LA.
Mm-hmm.
Was the research more in tune of getting the locations and atmosphere down, or did you delve into the trafficking issues in those particular locations?
This was mostly location work. I've done some research on human trafficking for a previous novel, which I kind of wove into this, stuff that I didn't use. But this was mostly location research for the purpose of finding interesting things and then getting the atmospherics of the location and what it's like, just what the air feels like and how fast the river goes through the center of Mostar, and all these different things that you don't even know you need until you get there and you stumble across it. And I'm very happy going into and out of entire countries without ever talking to anybody other than a bartender and a cab driver or bus driver or something.
They know most of it.
I don't have this agenda. I'm not going to meet people. I do that too, but there's for some, I didn't talk to anybody in Italy other than the people that were in my hotel and that sort of thing. But I walked around, all night, every night, and took hundreds of pictures and videos of whatever, and came up with ideas. And you do definitely get plot points when you see something. You're like, oh, okay, well they could do, this could lead to that. But for this, the research was essentially go to the place, pick up the atmospherics, make your book, sell your book, convince people that you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
This is kind of open-ended, but one of the themes that you explore in this book that you've explored in a lot of the previous Gray Man novels is the tension between the value of intelligence and the value of human life. In 1 Minute Out, this conflict felt a lot more vital and more immediate for obvious reasons. And without giving any spoilers, Court's kind of put in between a rock and a hard place in that regard once again. What is it about that tension that keeps drawing you back to that? And, how do you feel about that in the real world, like with our own intelligence, with our own military and the decisions they have to make? I mean,
I kind of wanted to play with the idea that Court is very sure of himself, and he doesn't have to always be right. It doesn't bother me if the readers say I disagree with what he's doing here. In Gunmetal Gray, there was a huge plot point where I thought, gosh, most people are going to think he should do what the U.S. government wants him to do, but he sees this higher truth that maybe they don't see.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't see. It's just interesting to me that this character has this moral compass that he's going to follow. If that leads him through a brick wall, he's going to go through it.
Yeah.
So I've done that in so many books where he works with bad guys to go after another bad guy or something. He justifies himself, his actions for a greater good. And so in this book, I wanted him to come up against the U.S. intelligence community, attempting to justify their own bad actions or, bedfellows, let's say, for a greater good. And I wanted to sort of see the juxtaposition of him going like, okay, it's real easy for me to criticize them, and then at the same time, it's essentially how he operates on a micro level or whatever. So that was what that was about for me. Like in the real world, I mean, I think intelligence has to, can't just go to friendly embassies and ask polite questions over tea, and you have to have strange bedfellows, and you have to, get down in the dirt. That doesn't mean we should be, down there getting intelligence from death squads in El Salvador while they kill church officials or whatever.
Right.
I mean, that can go way, way, way wrong really, really quick. So it is a super gray area.
Yeah.
So speaking of the gray area, the gray man has a line: "Hope isn't a strategy, but sometimes it's all you've got."
Yeah.
So where did that come from, and how did that apply to what you were writing when that line came out? Because I think it's an amazing line.
Thank you. Well, I just thought it up as I was writing. I wanted to have, there's a point, you're in his inner dialogue, and very early in the story where he says, I hope, all right, here's my plan. My plans go, to hell all the time, but here's my plan. I hope this, and I hope this, and I hope this. And as I wrote that, I was just wanted to I wanted him to counter himself. So the reader isn't going like, yeah, dude, hope in one hand and shit in the other and see which goes up first. So I just said, hope is not a strategy. And then I said that like his mentor had told him that. And then right when I wrote it, I was like, oh, this could be like a callback thing later in the story. I could do that again. So I think there's probably 4 times in there where he says, hope is not a strategy because of the situation he's in. And then towards at the end, he's just like, hope is not a strategy, but sometimes it's all you got. And that sort of sums up, not the book, but it sort of sums up the story itself.
Right.
Well done with it. I like it.
Thanks.
So knowing all the research that you do, I'm certain you've become somewhat of an expert on the facets of human trafficking. Is there anything the average person can do to help stop the sex slave trade? I know in law enforcement, sometimes it can be overwhelming. It seems like you're just filling up holes and other ones pop up. Yeah. So is this something only you think the government can handle, or justice-minded individuals can help prevent?
No, but it's exactly like the drug war. It's like, what can the individual do is, don't be part of the demand for it. But it's also exactly like the drug war that, telling people that. So there's a million ways people are abused in sex trafficking, not just prostitution, but, it's sort of other sorts of forced labor and pornography.
Slave trade is alive and well.
Yeah, it's absolutely alive and well. Now, in the book, I do have one line in there. So a main character in this book is actually kidnapped off the street for a bigger reason, not just randomly. She's sold into the trade. That is probably the rarest way that actually happens. It's other sorts of coercion or perceived improvement in one's life. It's basically different types of coercion along with different types of force. And like probably the least likely statistics say is that, a van pulls up next to you and grabs you and then you're sold into prostitution. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And it does happen in my book because it's related to the main, the guy that runs the evil enterprise. He's actually wants this woman because he's met her. But the demand, just the insatiable demand that we have all over the world. And, it was very important for me that this goes all the way back to Los Angeles. It starts off, in some remote land. But as I said earlier, that a third of human trafficking in America is massive, and a third of the victims are foreigners. And so I didn't want it to, be like, oh, your American hero goes and, these swarthy people are doing these horrible things and he's going to get that all squared away. It's like, look at the Epstein case. It's like, this happens here in America. Right. And I wanted that, that was important. So, the way you can help is not contribute to the demand.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's a simple solution.
It's a simple solution, but just like the drug war, it's not, it's not working. Yeah.
I know.
So I have a question. It seems to me, and I think we all share this kind of thought, is that, and we know how much Tom Clancy, influenced you in your early career, and you seem to have grown to kind of at a similar level. So, as an influencer and maybe a sounding board for up and coming authors, like Josh Hood and others, and their appointment as like a caretaker for the reemergence of the Ludlam series.
Mm-hmm.
Are you starting to see a little of your early self in some of these guys that maybe now that you're kind of influencing and becoming a voice for those guys?
Yeah, to a degree, I'd like to think that that's the case. Josh Hood, as you said, he's writing in the Ludlam, franchise, Treadstone book that's coming out soon. But he and I are really good friends, and we've been friends for about 5 years. He reached out to me. He had a book coming out, and we live in the same town, or almost in the same town. Actually, he lives probably about 30 minutes from me, and I borrowed a shooting mat for my sniper rifle, and he kept asking me like when I was going to bring it back, and I was like, Josh, it was true. I was like, I've been to Poland more times than I've been to Collierville, Tennessee in the last 2 years. It's 30 minutes away, but I hadn't been out there. But yeah, so we became friends. He reached out to me just cold and said, hey, I've got a book coming out. Will you blurb it? And I say yes as often as I can, but it was right in the thick of my Tom Clancy days, and I was way on deadline, and I was as nice as I could be. I was like, listen, I will push the crap out of it on social media when it comes out, and, send me your next book, but I'm just too slammed. And so we met for coffee a few months later, and we've been buddies ever since. And we talk about books. I don't know that I wouldn't say I've mentored Josh. Like, we cry on each other's shoulders about, our ideas not working, or like, hey, these 50 pages make no sense. And then, Josh will read mine and be like, no, man, it's good. I would just change this, or I'd read his and make comments. So it feels very back and forth. I will say that I'm bragging to people now that I'm a literary kingmaker, because which I never thought I would say. I had suggested Mark Cameron for the Tom Clancy franchise, and then that came to pass. And then I introduced Josh to my editor, Tom Colgan, and that's who's editing him on Treadstone. Yeah. So I'm like, look at me go. It's just like
there's a
lot
four
of
guys here.
Hey.
It's like a coaching tree. Exactly. It's like a coaching tree.
I'll make some calls, guys.
Help us out.
Thank you, kind sir.
So my question is a little more philosophical. I went back and forth on what my favorite book was, and I honest to God think this is my favorite one. And I've loved them all, but I think it's kind of like you get to know a little bit of Court in each of those in different ways, and this is kind of just a deeper glimpse into who he is. And it was cool that he was the guy I was hoping he was, which is
that's what I wanted to do. It's like, obviously it comes out of my head, and there's a version of me and him.
Sure.
I'm the the uncoordinated older Court Gentry with the low back pain. Other than that, it's exactly the same. No, like a lot of the smart aleck remarks and all these other things. Although I do always make the joke when people are like, he's so witty. It's like, how are you able to think up that stuff? I'm like, because I have 6 months to write the book, and it's like, I'm not thinking up everything as quickly as his rejoinders or whatever. Like, I have a little time to go over it. So, but I'm glad when people say that hearing him in the first person matches what you've come to enjoy.
Yeah.
Well, my compliment was actually leading to another question. Now, you mentioned you're 52. I'm turning 50 in May, and I'm really thrilled about. But what
you guys are all young.
You've accomplished a hell of a lot. Like we say, you've 7 Clancy books, 3 with him, and 3 or 4 on your own. And then this is your 9th Gray Man plus Red Medal. What is your looking at your career goals ahead? Like, what motivates you, and what are you motivated to accomplish next? Is it just the next book, or is it beyond that?
I've been thinking about that a lot recently. It's like, I'm like, do I have wild ambition. Did I ever have wild ambition? And I don't think I ever did. I always just wanted to write something good that, obviously would get turned into something, that would get published. But, I'm not trying to sound altruistic or anything like that, but it's really like, I don't sit around and go like, how many books does this sell compared to this one? Obviously you want your career to go better, and you want, there's a lot of people at the publishing house that work their butts off, and, it's like you want to be part of, this team, that things are going well.
Yeah.
But when I think about like what motivates me is just like, I just want the next book to be better than the last one and different than the last one. I think I'm just naturally becoming a better writer. Like I'm more proud of my last, 4 books than I am of my first 4 books or something like that. But
Nice.
But it's tougher to make them different. So that's what I struggle with. But I've been working for weeks and weeks and weeks on an idea for a book, a 10th Gray Man book, and I'm making sure there's whole scenarios that I'll sort of like jot down and figure out, and I'll be like, that's a little bit like this, or that's a lot like that, and so I kind of have to pull them. So I guess I'm always looking at the next thing, not trying to make it bigger than the last thing, but try to make it better. Because that's, as the author, that's sort of all you can do. You can, show up where you're supposed to and sign books, but other than that, the quality inside the pages is 99.9% of your contribution.
True. Well, hey, here we go. We kind of wrapped up our little quick discussion. We do owe it to our viewers for a quick lightning round. So we're going to go to a single question each because we know everything there is to know about Mark Greaney already. So I'm going to go first. All right. So with 1 minute out in first person, will you be referencing yourself in the third person during your book tour?
Will I be referencing myself? Oh my gosh.
That would be hilarious, by the way.
Let me try that. Here's what you can expect with the Mark Greaney book. Something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh,
you know what else Mark Greaney thinks about that?
Yeah.
Mark Greaney was thinking about first person a lot.
Yeah. I asked him, and he said, or maybe I should just do my book signings in the first person. Be like, wow, there's a lot of people here. I'm kind of
yeah.
Kind of
you,
like
you need to sign the book to Court Gentry.
Yeah. No, Sean, you said you were coming to one of the events, right?
Yeah, I'm actually trying to decide between Milwaukee and Ann Arbor,
Okay.
and it.
Michigan. Go to the Michigan. Go to Michigan.
Well, I was going to say, whichever one you go to, if you hear me say, "What can you expect in a Mark Greaney book?"
Oh,
my permission to pick up the biggest Tom Clancy book you can find and just smack me in the face.
And then blame me for suggesting it.
Hey, Mark, I want to know no DC area spots, huh?
No, well, I did with Red Metal, which just came out last July, and so I think the publicist is very careful to not let it saturate. You can't have too much Mark Greaney in one place. It's just,
there you go.
You'll flood the airwaves. Yeah.
That was kind of third person. I was going to say,
that was well done.
There you go. So you're
great.
Yeah,
joined right in.
That was a riff on the previous joke.
We started this thing. Sweet.
That's a callback, boys.
Yeah, there we go.
I'm thinking of a Seinfeld episode, and you're just going to be like, Mark is getting upset. You're going to be George Costanza everywhere you go. So doing that with Hood, at least. So, okay, so I'm up. So, what is the last Netflix series you binge watched?
So it's hard for me to remember what's on Netflix. I have on demand, so I can pull up just sort of whatever I want. So it's like, is something on AMC or Netflix? It's like, I always kind of forget.
Any show doesn't have to be Netflix, I guess.
Barry, that's Netflix, right?
Barry, yeah.
With Bill
It
Hader.
is, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's fantastic. I think it's terrific. And in the 7th episode, you see Bill Hader. The 7th episode of the first season, you see Bill Hader from Saturday Night Live totally rocking an M4, room clearing with one other guy, mag changes, keeping his elbow down, almost always looking through the EOTech site, and it's like, that's the funny guy from Saturday Night Live. And part of the story is, he's an assassin, and it's great. So I've actually watched it when it came out, and I'm just watching it again with my fiance.
All right, mine is actually a callback to last interview. And as you have just finished your research and you're about to embark on your next novel, I just want to make sure you remember that you told me I could be a character in the next book.
All right. I can make you a character. Yeah, I'm going to Dubai for research, and there's tons of Sean Camerons in Dubai. So I'm just going to make you one of them.
Hey,
Fulton Cameron, I guess.
Funny enough, I got invited to Dubai. My wife and I got invited to Dubai for a wedding from a guy we met in Italy when we were there this past year. So
Wow,
I'd be there myself.
A lot of Irishmen there in Dubai. All
that
right.
I might work that into my story. I don't have it all figured out yet.
Yeah.
I need some
All
filler.
right.
Apart from his children being born, you might be making him his life one. You know?
And
All right, Chris.
so I get the honors of the last question.
Yep.
Sure.
And it's a difficult one. How many minutes, since your book is 1 minute out, how many minutes are there in a week?
I can do this. See, how much time do I have? I'm going to say 22,000.
No.
Like way off. I could have got my.
You were
zero,
right.
so-
You had the right multiplier going. You just
Good idea.
doubled.
It's a 5-digit number, but it's half of what you. It's 10,080.
Oh, okay. I was way off. Okay.
But
Yeah.
you know what? I use the calculator, so I
Oh,
can.
you meant on Earth. You meant on Earth? A week on Earth?
Oh, he was going for the
Yeah,
moon.
I was
Oh, yeah,
I was
no.
thinking of either a larger or smaller planet, whatever a week lasts. 14 days.
Jupiter. All right. Well, this is our little quick show with Mark Greaney and his new book coming out, 1 Minute Out. You'll be referencing himself in the third person for the remainder of 2020.
Tour dates are online. Buy the book.
Order it up, people. This is going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
Mark, once again, we loved having you on. Thanks.
I appreciate it.
Congrats,
I
brother.
really enjoyed it.
On everything. Congrats on the
Thank
book.
you, Mark.
Yeah, all life.
On life, yeah.
So the crew would like to thank Mark Greaney for coming on the show today. It was an honor and privilege to speak to him once again. And his new book, 1 Minute Out, comes out tomorrow. So go out and buy it. Click on the link below, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on social media where we will once again show you who's coming out next time. And with that, I'd like to send out a final toast with the boys. Good show, gentlemen. There you go.
There it is.
Smoke 'em if you got 'em. So I'm going to do this blind without anything written.
Talk about him in third person or first person.
Mike Houts would like to thank Mark Greaney. It was such a pleasure and really an honor for having us. I'm just going to start over.
Not as easy as it looks, is it?
Well, I'm waiting for jazz hands and they didn't show up.
No,
So that threw me because I was waiting for them. Also, please like and make a comment. Do whatever the hell you want. Just go on YouTube.
You were going to
There are
say
places
Twitter.
that we're not even on.
you were going to say Twitter. I knew it.
I love it. The disease is now, the Wuhan virus has now spread.
The Cameron
Wuhan
virus
virus.
has infiltrated my brain.
The Wuhan virus.
I thought the antibiotics would kill it.
Take 7.
This is new territory, boys. Thank him for the jazz hands that I see up in the upper right-hand corner. So, Sean, do you look at him while you're talking? Like, why am I
No.
looking at you guys while I'm talking? That's
So
the
I
dumbest
do.
thing possible.
I make myself big, and I try to look at myself. But the problem is,
I
I have really
can't.
good peripheral vision.
I don't want to look at myself. I don't want to look at myself, and I'm looking at you guys. Damn it. It's all good, gentlemen. Payback's a bitch, I can tell you.
I know.
So please like us and thank us for putting this show on. And don't thank us because you being here is really all that I need.
Why?
You wait. You wait.
I script mine.
Thank us. Thank us for making your lives better. 'Cause
Aren't
that's
I
what
the
we
best? People, aren't I the best? Hope you guys have a catheter going because this could take a while. I feel your pain now, Sean. This is really brutal if you don't script it out. Also, watch our shows. Go on YouTube, go on Apple, go on wherever Chris puts it out there because God knows that I can't get past this section. I don't know why.
do. I think it was great. I think
You have to, Dude, you should have went with
I
it. It
actually
was
liked where
good.
you were going with
Yeah,
that.
It was good.
I started to lose traction, and I was kind of going off. And then I looked to Sean like he's going to bail me out in this tiny little window. Like he's not going to help me.
No, there's no help
You're
here,
on your
buddy.
own.